Hey everybody, it's Paula here from the Excel Club and welcome to today's video. Today's video is something very different because I am doing my first YouTube premiere. So if you're watching this video live with me now, I'm in the chat so you can ask me any questions on what I'm going to present to you today. Now what I'm going to present to you today and what you're going to learn to do with me is to recreate this interactive dashboard. Now, this dashboard is a dashboard that I created last week for the Excel Hash Challenge with Oz de Soleil. And in the comments on my video, I was asked if I could put this together as a course or as a tutorial to show you how I actually built it instead of just demonstrating the use of the dashboard that I created. So this dashboard has a number of elements. We were given a list by Oz de Soleil of ingredients that we had to use, and then we had to use our creativity to go off and create something. So the ingredients were a cutout person. We had to pick two from the following list: let, lambda, dynamic arrays, or Power Query new data types. We had to use the even function, and then everything is a go except for VBA. So I have cutout people, I have let, I have dynamic arrays, and I have the even function. And using all of them, I connected to some data on the web using Power Query. And from that, I transformed the data and then I created this interactive dashboard. And this drop down controls everything on this dashboard. It controls the charts and it controls these text boxes in the cutout people. So we're going to, over the next 50 minutes, we're going to learn how you can recreate all of this. Now, before we get stuck in, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I do hope that you will subscribe now. I hope you'll also smash that notifications button and that like button so you don't miss any more of my videos and so that others can also find this video. You'll also find a link below this video over to my website, and on the website you will be able to download the file that I have created here today, and you'll also find link backs to the original data sources that you're going to need to connect to this, to create this and to connect to the data that I connected to. So if you're ready to get stuck in, let's hop over to Excel in a blank workbook and let's learn to recreate this interactive dashboard. We're going to start this project in a blank worksheet and a blank workbook. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to navigate to the internet and we're going to download the data that we need. So the website that I am using is the cso.ie, and you'll find a link below this video directly to the two pages that you need. So we have table 3.2 Ireland Leaving Cert Candidate 2019. And if we click this Women and Men in Ireland 2019, it will download this table for us. We also have a 2016, and again there is a link in here, and you'll need to go to this link and download the data. There you'll find both of these links below in the description to this video, or over on the website you'll also find direct links to this data. Now you need to download both of these files and save them to your computer because we're going to now access these using Power Query. So in our blank workbook, if we go to data, and from data, now that we've downloaded these files, we can say get data from file and from an Excel workbook. Now this will then allow us to navigate to where we have our files saved. So I have my file saved here. I have Ireland Leaving Cert 2016 and 19. I'm going to take 2016 first and press import. Now when we press import, we get this navigation screen, and by clicking on this it shows us the data that is available and gives us a preview. Now we are going to transform this data, and when we select transform, it opens up our Power Query editor. And it's in here that we need to do our data transformations to get the data into a usable format. Now, Power Query, I totally love Power Query for data cleansing. And you may find that you do your data cleansing in slightly different steps to what I do it in, but this is the way I am going to go ahead and clean this data. So first of all, I'm going to remove all of the nulls. So the nulls have been removed from this row. Now I'm also going to then move this first row to be our header. So over here in this little box here, I can use first row as header. So now I have boys 1, girls 2, boys 3, girls 4. And I'm going to change these headers in a moment. Now we have some more nulls over here. So I'm also going to remove the nulls from this column as well. And that gets rid of all of the nulls. So now we have English, French. We've got all of the different subjects in here for us, but we don't have a total. Now what we want is the boys and the girls. We don't want the boys and the girls too. So I'm going to select these columns and I'm going to say remove columns. And this removes both of these columns. Now this boys 3 and this girls 4 are percentages, but if we move them into Excel like this, it's not going to show it as a percentage. So what we need to do is divide these numbers by 100 and then convert it into a percentage. So we're going to divide and we're going to divide by 100 and say okay. And then we select the girls, and as well we are going to divide this by 100 and say okay. So now if we select these two columns here, we can change the data type on these to percentage, and the percentage is going to come in just fine into Excel. Now we need to change the labels on this. So this is going to be, I'm going to rename this first one to Boys 2016. 2016. Actually, I'm going to put in a space 2016, and I'm going to put in my girls. I'm going to rename this one as well. So rename girls underscore 2016. In my boys 3, I'm going to rename this one to 2016 boys AB. And this is going to be 2016 girls AB. So I'm going to rename this one 2016 girls AB. So they're girls and boys that got A's and B's in these particular state examinations, the percentage of them. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this Power Query editor and I'm going to load this as a connection. Now I'm only going to load it as a connection because I'm not completely finished with it. What I want to do is get my second table of data, and then I want to squash both of these tables into the one table. So I'm going to say close and load to, because this gives us the option in here. And if we want to create a connection only, it's not going to create a table in our worksheet. Instead, it's going to create this connection over here. So now we're going to go and get the second workbook. And again, I'm going to say get data from file and from workbook. And this time I'm taking the 2019. Now quite often you could take the two files together and you could merge them together, but the steps in transforming each of these is slightly different. And when I tried to merge them as the one in a folder, it didn't fully work for me. So instead I'm taking them as two individual tables. So I'm going to transform the data in here, and this again brings up our Power Query editor. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to start by getting rid of the nulls. So I'm going to get rid of the nulls on that sheet, and I'm going to get rid of the blanks and the nulls on this one as well. So I'm going to get rid of the nulls and say okay. Now this leaves me with a total, whereas I didn't have a total on the other one. So we might go back and change the other one so we have a bit of a total. I'm going to delete these two columns. So I'm going to remove these columns. I want to then use the first row as headers. So now we've got boys 1, girls 2, and we have a total figure in here. So I'm going to change the headings on this one now. So rename this to boys, that's 2019, This one is going to be girls, so I can rename this one as well to be girls 2019. Now we have renamed this one again to 2019 boys AB, and this last one is going to be, I'm going to rename this one as well, so I'm going to say rename, and it is going to be 2019 girls AB. Now we need to convert these ones here into percentages. Now, if we have the two columns selected, we can't do the multiply by, so we need to do one column at a time. So we are going to, first of all, or do the divide by, divide this by 100. And we're going to divide the girls as well by 100. And say OK. And now we can convert both of these to our percentage data type. And we make sure these two are on our number data types. Now we have a total in here and we need the total. And I deleted the total from the previous query. So over on queries, I just selected queries here, and I'm going to jump back to the first query for a moment. And if we go through the steps and these applied steps down on the right, we can see exactly what happened with each different step. So we promoted headers, we changed the data type, we filtered the rows to get rid of null. So it's this filter row that made the difference. So I'm going to go in, remove that particular filter. So now we see we have our totals in here, but we still need to get rid of some nulls. So as part of our transformation steps, I'll go in here, select null and say OK. Now it's removed the additional nulls, but it's kept our leaving cert candidates in. So now we have two separate tables. We've got a table for 2019 and we also have a table for 2016. And what we're going to do now is mash both of these tables together. Our home ribbon, what we're going to do is we are going to merge queries. And merge queries is going to allow us to merge two queries together. So the first query is the query that we're currently in, and this is going to allow us to select the additional query to merge. Now we need to now identify the columns in each of these that should have a match. And in this case, it is our subject fields. So we see when we select the subject fields on both of these tables under our merge, down the bottom, it's saying that it's matched 14 out of 14 from the first table. I'm going to say OK, and that's now merged table 1 into table 2. These fields are tables, so we need to expand these tables. Now I'm going to remove the use original column name as prefix. And I'm also not going to bring in the subject because we already have the subject brought in here. So once I bring in the subject, we can say OK. And now we have merged both of these tables into one table. So we can now close and load this table into Excel as a table. So File, Close and Load. And this will now load the table into Excel just as we had expected it to. Now these cells here and these cells here are percentages. So I'm going to change these to our percentages in Excel. And then I'm also going to format the other numbers to show some commas and just make them a little bit easier to read. But I'm going to remove the decimal places. So now we have all the data that we need into our spreadsheet, and it's from here that we can now start to create the dashboard that you've seen in the preview before we started this example. Firstly, I'm going to close down my queries and connections pane just to give me more room on the screen, and I'm going to increase the zoom here to 120%. Now for percentages, it wouldn't be right to add all of these percentages together to get the total. So we are going to use an average function here to get the average of all of these percentages. And we are going to fill this across here. And then I'm going to copy these formulas over to my other percentages as well down here. So now I have totals in for everything. So you'll notice the total Leaving Cert candidates doesn't equal the sum of all of these because each student takes multiple examinations. So this is unique students, and then these are unique students for the particular topic. So you see 27,000 boys took the Leaving Cert in 2019 against almost the same number in 2016. Now I'm going to grab these headings here and I'm going to just copy these headings down here for my workings. So I'm just going to paste them in here for my workings. Now I'm going to have an increase, a percentage increase in boys, and I'm going to have a percentage increase in girls. And these are going to be calculation fields that I'm going to add when we pull some data into the table. Now what we want to be able to do is for the user to select the subjects from a drop down and us to be able to then visualize the information from the subject that's been selected in the drop down. So we're going to head over now to a blank sheet, and on a blank sheet we're going to create our drop down because it's this drop down that we are going to then use to control this sheet here. So on our blank worksheet, I'm going to pick any cell here and I'm going to say insert, and I'm going to go to data. I'm going to go to data validation. We're going to select data validation any value. I'm going to go to our list and our source. I'm going to jump over to our table and I'm going to select all of the cells within our table here. So that is all of our subjects. So now I'm going to say okay. The user can select between the different subjects. And I'm going to make that cell a bit bigger so we can see it. Make sure that all of the words actually fit in. Then I'm going to go to my home ribbon, and from my home ribbon, I'm going to select input cell style. And I'm going to make the text size a lot bigger. I'm going to increase this to 16%. Now with it increased, I'm going to need to increase the size of the width of the column as well. So now we have our drop down, and this drop down, if we go to our original data set and then this cell over here, we can equal to our drop down. So now we can use a lookup formula to pull back the values that we need based on the selected subject. So I'm going to use XLOOKUP for this, and XLOOKUP we're going to use also as a dynamic array to spill all of the values across this row. So XLOOKUP is going to look up the particular subject in the subject column and then return all of these columns, the corresponding value for all of these columns with just the one formula. So we will start with XLOOKUP. And XLOOKUP first looks for a lookup value. So our lookup value is our subject. Now I'm just going to F4 to lock that in. The lookup array is this array here of all of the subjects. So this is where we are looking up our value. After this, we need a return array. Now we want to return all of these cells. So I'm going to select all of them because Excel 365 allows you to return spilled arrays, and Excel 365 thinks differently to other versions of Excel. So with this now, we'll be able to, with one formula, spill all of these values across. So I'm going to close the bracket on our lookup formula and hit enter. And you see now with just the one formula, we have spilled all of the values across. Now the values that we have spilled across haven't come across in the same format. So I'm just going to select these cells And from my home ribbon, I am going to change these to my percentages. So we have our percentages. I'm also going to put in a formula for the increase in boys and increase in girls. So the increase in boys is going to be the boys 2019 minus the boys 2016 divided by the boys 2016. And the increase in girls is going to be I can actually just fill that formula straight across to get the increase in girls and change these to our percentages as well. So now we see we have a 3% increase in boys from 2016 to 2019. And we have a 22% increase in girls for the chosen subject. This, as I said, is dynamic. So if we come back here to where we're going to create our dashboard and we select the different subject, this is going to update accordingly. So we have the right subject in here. I have quickly typed out here the sentence that we want to create in a dynamic way. Dynamic, so when this subject changes and all these values update, the sentence also updates. So the sentence is going to read, the total boys that took the subject, and anything in stars relates to a data field above. In 2016 was boys 2016. So we're going to take boys 2016 versus boys 2019. So we need to make these values all interactive by linking them into a sentence. So we can start by creating a sentence. I'm going to copy the first bit of text in here just to make things a little bit easy for me and to cheat. I'm going to put this in inverted commas. So the total boys that took the space and then close the inverted commas. And then we want to link this. So we're going to ampersand this with physics, and we can ampersand that then with more text that says in 2016 was, and again we're going to close the bracket on that because we need to join this using ampersand to the value for boys 2016, which we have in cell F21. So we've now linked that cell in there, so we can ampersand this, and we need to put in inverted commas versus, and then we're going to ampersand this as well. So just put in another space there because the spaces are important in the end. We're going to ampersand this to the value for boys 2019. And again, we're going to join this with a little bit of text that says in 2019. Now I'm going to just close that to make sure the first part of this is actually correct and that we've put it in properly. So the boys that took physics in 2016 was 4,429. Yes, this figure is correct. And then we have the 4,417 in 2019. So that is correct. Let us check now if we change the subject to construction studies, that this now updates to construction studies. The data also updates accordingly and the numbers in here also update correctly. So now we can just add on to this. So the next part of this is that is an increase of, so I'm going to just copy that piece of text just to make things a little bit easy for me. Press F2 to get into edit mode, and then we're going to put in a full stop and continue on. So that's an increase of, and then we're going to close the ampersand on that and join. Now the next that we're looking at is a percentage. And if we're putting percentages into text, we need to use the text function. So we're going to say text, and text looks for a value. So the increase in boys is this 8% that we have in here. So I'm going to put in the 8%, but now it looks for a format value. And our format value is going to be 0.00% to show 2 decimal points after the percentage. And I can close my bracket on that. So now we need to add this to more text. So we have, that's an increase of which, and then we're going to close the text again and join this. And again, we have 2016 boys AB. So this again is a percentage. So we are going to use the text function again. And the text function will allow us show this percentage in our text as a percentage value. So it was 9.4%. And our format is going to be 0.00%. And our format is going to be 0 in inverted commas, 0.00%. And we can close the bracket on that. So of which, and again, we are going to ampersand this. Got an A or B in 2016. And then another close of the ampersand, close of the text, another ampersand, and we're going to add in the value for boys in 2019. But again, it's a text function. So we're saying text, our boys 2019 value, and then our format is going to be 0.00% and close the bracket of that. So that is the boys 2019 value, which we are going to ampersand and join to in 2019 and close our last text. And that should now be correct, except I have something in wrong. So I'm just going to troubleshoot this a little bit. I see I have 2 commas there. Okay, so I spot the error. So I have a double inverted comma there, and I was missing the inverted comma from here. And I've also spotted I am missing the percentage sign from here as well. So hopefully this should now work. Good stuff. Now I'm missing some spaces as well. So in 2019 at the end, I'm going to go back in here and put in some spaces here. I'm going to add a space between the in and the 2019, and now that looks a lot better. So now if I change my topics, so we see we have engineering, and it's changed this to engineering and this to engineering. So what we can do now is, I'm going to delete this from here. What we can do now is I'm going to take a copy of this, and I'm literally going to paste it in below. And I'm going to change this so that it now refers to the girls. So where we have the word boys, I am going to change it to girls. And then I'm also going to just drag all of the values across one to update the formula, so it just pulls in all of the values for the girls instead of the boys. Nice and easy changes. And now we have a sentence for the boys and we have a sentence for the girls. Before we can use these sentences, these dynamic sentences in our cutout people as labels, we need to address the issue of the total. Now I'm just going to rename this cell to total, just so it's easier to read. And if we jump down to our drop down, our total should now be in here. If we select total, we now have our total values, but our sentence no longer makes sense. If we read our sentence now, it says total boys that took the total in 2016. Whereas when there is an individual subject, it makes absolutely perfect sense because it says total boys that took the physics in 2016. So what we need to do is change this sentence a little bit so that when it has the total selected, that leaving cert is put in here instead. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to delete the word there because we don't actually need that in here. And again, I'm going to delete it underneath. Now the sentence makes a little bit more sense. So we're going to start to create our formula. Now this formula that we're going to create, we're going to use let. And let is another new function of Excel 365. And what let will allow you to do is allow you to create name value pairs and then reuse them throughout that formula. So we're going to start with let, and let is first looking for a name. So we're going to call this scenario, because it is the scenario that the user is going to pick. Now it's looking for the name value. So where is the actual scenario? So I'm going to jump in to our worksheet with our drop down, and I'm going to select our drop down as our actual scenario. And I've entered too few arguments, that's fine. Now that we have named our scenario, we can now use this in a formula. So we're going to create an if statement, and our if statement is looking for a logical test. And if our scenario, so if I start typing in scenario, it comes up, and that doesn't look like I've spelt it correctly, so please ignore the spelling error. So if the scenario is equal to, and we're going to say total because we've changed the wording of that now to total. Well, if it's equal to total, we're going to want to use the wording, the leaving cert, and otherwise we are just going to want to use the scenario. So I'm going to select the scenario, and it didn't type in properly there. So you can see when I start typing it in, the let function names appear in our intelligence, and that is spelled incorrectly. So please do ignore the spelling mistake. So if the scenario, which we've named, so if the scenario equals total, we're going to replace that with the words leaving cert. Otherwise, we want to use the words. We can close our bracket on our if statement and close our bracket on our let. Now we have physics here, and if we change this to total, we see the boys that took the total in 2016. This is updated though to say the leave insert. So if I go in here and I replace this cell with this, and again if I F2 to edit this one and I replace this cell with this, now the total boys that took the leaving cert, the total girls that took the leaving cert, or if we have a subject, the subject name is in, and it makes a hell of a lot more sense to read. So now we can take these values and we can put these values into our images. So let's hop over to our worksheet now. And in our worksheet, we're going to insert our cutout people. So to insert our cutout people, all we have to do is go to our icons. And in our icons, we have cutout people. And in here, we can select between many different cutout people. Now I'm going to select two different cutout people that are holding a whiteboard. So we can say holding. So I typed in hold there, and we can see that we have a number of people to choose from that are holding boards. Now I want to pick a male and a female. So I'm going to select these two. It doesn't really matter what two you select. I'm going to select these two and say insert, and these now are going to download and insert into our worksheet. So all we have to do now is resize them. So I'm just going to click one of them and drag him out of the way. I'm going to drag her over here and make her a little bit smaller, and we can stick this here and then bring the man over and resize the man as well. So he looks considerably smaller. And we can resize the man. Now I'm going to insert some more rows over here for a moment, and I can just pull this over here just to give a little bit more room. And then I'm going to format this so that the text is centered and bold on this as well. Now we can, in these images here, we can add in some text boxes, and we can use these text boxes then to link back to the dynamic sentences that we have created. So I'm going to go to my insert ribbon, insert a text box, and I'm going to just draw my text box in here. And in my formulas bar, I'm going to say equal to, I'm going to jump over and select my girl sentence. And now we can see that the text has been pulled into our cutout. Now we can align our cutout a little bit in line with the actual board itself. So I'm going to edit the text now to fill up this box a little bit. So I'm going to select the box from the home ribbon. I'm going to increase the text size to a 14, and I'm going to make sure the text is centered in the box as well. So now if I put in a longer subject, I want to check for a longer subject now and make sure that it all fits into the box. It doesn't, so I'm going to make the box a tiny little bit bigger. I'm going to format this shape as well so that there is no fill on the shape. So the shape is the same color as the background, and I'm also going to make sure that it has no line too. Now I'm going to take a copy of this. I'm going to bring it over here and I'm going to paste it into the other box over here. Change the lineup on this one too. And instead of it equaling B27, it's going to equal B26. Now we have our text boxes in, so when the user comes along and changes between the different subjects, the text box updates and the information is easy for them to read in the text box now as it is. The next step now is to create our chart. So I'm going to hop back over to our data sheet and I'm going to say, give a title of boys and girls for our first chart. And we're going to have 2016 and we're going to have 2019. And I'm just going to link this to the cells above. For 2016, we have boys. For 2019, we have this boys over here. Now, we could probably run the charts directly off the original data, but because I was under pressure for time, this is exactly how I created it. So I set up a separate little table. So the girls for 2016, and then we have the girls for 2019. And then I made a second table for a second chart. So I just copy and pasted this one here. And this time I took this was the percentages. So I have my boys 2016 percentage. So my boys 2016 percentage. And this one here should be my boys 2019 percentage. Oops, I changed this again to my 2019 percentage. And if I just drag these figures over, it should take in the girls' figures right beside them. So now I have my little bits of data for the charts that I'm going to create. So we can start creating our charts. So I'm going to say insert and insert a stacked chart. And in my chart design, I'm going to switch my rows with my columns. So now we have the girls on the top and we have the boys on the bottom. So we can add some labels to this chart as well and do a little bit of work to this chart. We remove our grid lines. We can change the color of the data point. So I'm going to select the first data point. And because this is girls, I'm going to change the color of this one to a more pinky color, but I'm going to increase the transparency so it's not like red like that it is a transparent kind of pink color. And I'm going to give it no border, and I'm going to come down to the boys as well, and I am going to also give the boys the blue color, and I'm going to give them no border around this as well. Now we can also add in some data labels. So we've added in our data labels there, but we are going to bring in more options for our data labels. And in our data labels, in our label options, we're going to bring in the category name. We are going to bring in the series name. So it brings in the series name for the boys. We're going to do the same for the girls. We also want the series name in for the girls because we removed the axis. So it's easier if we have the values in here. Now I'm also going to select the entire chart and I'm going to reduce the gap width to just 50% to bring these together a little bit more, and I'm going to make the chart a little bit smaller, and this is going to be total students So that is the total. Now we can take a copy of just this chart, or we can even just take this chart itself, bring it over into our workbook, and we're going to paste it in here. Just like that. And now we have another chart to add to this. So we're going to go back to our worksheet over here and take this data here. And from this data, we are going to insert, this time, we are going to insert a bar chart. And we're going to go to chart design and switch the rows with the columns here as well. So now we can do some formatting on this chart. If we do more or less what we done earlier on, we can remove all of the data points. We can change the format, the color of this series, the girl series. So we're going to change this to our red color again. And with our red color, we are going to increase the transparency so it looks like the other chart that we have, and no border. With the boys, we're also going to have no border. Now we want to add in our data labels. So we'll add in our data labels, but we are going to add more to our data labels. So we're going to add more options, and in our more options, under label options, we're going to add the category value and the series name. Now by doing so, we could remove the years from over here. Now we have to do the same with this one here as well. So in our label options, we would need the series name and the category value as well. So now the top one is 2019 and the bottom one is 2016. In our chart as well, we are just going to, so I'm going to select our chart and we're going to reduce the gap width between these to 50%. Oops, 50%. To make these a little bit closer, and we can make this chart smaller now. We can also remove the legend from the bottom because we no longer need the legend at the bottom because we can see the blue as the boys. I'm going to take this chart, bring it over to our dashboard here and just paste it in anywhere for the moment. Then we can start to resize it now. And then we can test and see. I'm going to get rid of this format shape over here. We can test and see if this works, if everything updates accordingly, which it does. Now, some finishing touches is that we could group things together. For example, I can group the text box with the person. So by selecting both of these and then selecting group and grouping them, when I select one, they both move at the same time. We can also then go to our view, and in our view remove our formula bars, our headlines and our grid lines as well. And we could then protect the worksheet. The final step would be to protect the worksheet because so nothing gets ruined on you. Now I do have one thing left to go through. And this last thing is my reason and my validation for using the even function and how I put the even function into all of this. So if we go back here to our original data set, and what I did was I combined the even function in my Lookup function. Let's just jump back here and let us pick a different subject. So let us pick French, for example. So we pick French. And we see in French we have some odd numbers in here. Now the odd numbers don't look as good as the even numbers. So what we can do is create an if statement to say that if these are odd, we're going to even them. We're going to take these numbers and we're going to make them all even. So we need to make some changes to our Lookup function in our original data sheet. So I'm just going to turn back on my formula bar here so we can edit the function in the formula bar. Now I'm going to take a copy of all of this and we need to now edit this. So basically, if this value is a full number, so if it is a whole number, well then we want to make it even. Otherwise we want to take the number as it is. Now why whole numbers and other numbers? Well, the boys and girls numbers are whole numbers, whereas the percentages are percentages. So if we have a number greater than 1, well then it is not a percentage. So it's going to be one of these other values. So let's change this to an if statement. So if, and if all of that is greater than or equal to 1, is greater than 1, well then we want to take the even of that number. Otherwise, we just want to take that number by itself, and we can close all the brackets on this. And now we have incorporated the even function into this. Now we could write this formula to look a little bit different. This is how I presented it in my end result of the actual hash challenge. But looking back on this now, you could write this and it would look a lot easier to read if we wrote this as a let statement. Now we seen earlier an example of a let statement. So let's go ahead and try and write this as a let statement. So we can first say let, and the let name is going to be the lookup. Let's just call it lookup. And the value is going to be our lookup function. So then we can say if, and if our lookup, I'm going to say lookup, if our lookup is greater than 0 or greater than 1, then we want the even of the lookup. Otherwise, we want just the lookup on its own. And we can close the bracket on our if statement. And we can then close the bracket on our let statement and hit enter. And we now get the exact same results. So this formula, these two formulas are very different. So I'm going to show formula text. Whoops. Equals formula text. And I'm going to fill this down. And we can see one is an awful lot easier to read than the other one because we've defined, using the let statement, we've defined a name value pair. And the name value pair, well, we've called it lookup because we're going to be looking up certain values. We've defined that lookup and we've only mentioned that formula once in our entire formula, whereas in the initial one, it was mentioned 3 times. So that's it for today's premiere, everybody. We have now recreated the dashboard that I had created for the Excel hash challenge. I really do hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video and you enjoyed it as a premiere, do give the video a big thumbs up. Now, there are a few little things in this that we could change again. For example, we have a border outside of this chart. So I'm going to remove the border and that would make it a little bit cleaner. I'm going to remove the border on this chart as well. And that'll just makes the charts just look that little bit cleaner. Now we could also, in this chart here, delete the boy and girl. And up the top, we could put in Irish Leaving Cert 2016 versus 2019. We could put some text in here to please select your subject so the user knows to select your subject. But I did say I was going to have this done in 45 to 50 minutes. So thank you all very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the premiere, I'm sure I will do one again soon. Goodbye now.